Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
And I am Anthony Siade, and welcome to yet another edition of the Hour of Politics, yet a Focus on Liberia. If you are just joining us, we want to say welcome. Today's topic is the economics, the diplomacy, and the politics of football, the case of World Cup 2022. Folks, you are aware there is an ongoing World Cup, and there are so many facts that you don't know. And we also want to use the time to bring all of us to a point of reflection concerning the World Cup. There are so many things that have been said, and there are so many knowns and unknowns. And some that are known to you and unknown to you, we will be doing our very best to share some of those things with you. And of course, we try to do our little analysis, to put you in the know of the specifics and then to simplify things. And so welcome to the broadcast. Again, the topics: economic diplomacy, politics of football, the case of World Cup 2022. And when we're talking about the politics, and our president and our nation Liberia and the people Liberia will be in the picture in a manner be way. Let us get to it. So World Cup 2022 is in the tiny or small country of Qatar. There is something you must know. You must know about this. This World Cup in Qatar 2022 is the most expensive World Cup ever in the history of World Cup. In fact, it is the most largest, if I can pull it that way, or let me make it right here, it's the largest capital campaign in human history. You heard me. This is the largest capital campaign in the history of the world. What do we mean by capital campaign? Capital is money. So in other words, this is the largest amount being spent for a single event or a single project in the world within a relatively short period of time. The World Cup, as we know, World Cup 2022 is specifically for 29 days and is being held in Qatar. 220 billion is the estimated cost for this World Cup that is ongoing. And this 29-day global phenomenon is happening in a tiny little country in the Middle East. The Arab nation Qatar, there's so much stigma, there's so much negativity against that Islamic nation. And the Western world, always look at Islamic nations, nations that are predominantly Muslim, Islamic, they look at them in a very negative sense. They brand them as either terrorists, suicide bombers, people who don't believe in peace, who are all for violence, and they are people who hate the West, who are more about causing chaos and disturbing the peace of the world. That is the narrative created by the West against almost all Islamic nations in the world, or nations of predominantly Islamic faith or of the Muslim faith. And so to see that the global phenomenon is being held in a country that is predominantly Muslim, that the West has this so much negative impression of or narrative against, and painted to be people who always fomenting violence, for Qatar to have succeeded to host the World Cup in the world. You have countries like the United States of America that has been opting to host the World Cup, and the FIFA or governing body is yet to make any such decision. The tiniest country to have succeeded to be hosting the World Cup is a big deal, because to host the World Cup, it comes with a huge responsibility. Number one, that nation will be able to put some money. To spend some money, you have to build stadiums, you have to upgrade airports, you have to build hospitality centers, talking about hotels. There got to be restaurants, because the whole world is being brought to your country, and they should experience a significant level of comfort in your country. That requires a huge capital investment. So for Qatar to not only be able to find the money and invest the money, but to also be able to find a way to win this space, to win this privilege, if I can put it that way, or this competition of hosting the World Cup, because it's like a competition. Many countries want to host it. It's a huge, big deal. More so when you look at security of those who are going to the World Cup. You're talking about participating nations. You're talking about nationals from all walks of life going there. And one of the major things that can be on everybody's mind is the issue of security. Will I be safe at the World Cup? Will there not be chaos? Will there not be any form of violence? Will there not be anything to be done by any extremist, as we see in other nations during this global event, something that can cause serious chaos? So if you are hosting the World Cup, security is a big thing in addition to making the necessary investment. And so let me come to one major question here quickly. That question is Qatar the biggest winner or loser in this World Cup 2022? Now, there are some people who actually did not put thoughts in this. Football is not about just earning a trophy or winning a championship. Every competition in today's world, in this contemporary world, is about money and many other things. It is about image building. It's about the reputation of either a team or a nation if it is a competition that involves nations. So it is more than just somebody participating and winning that trophy. In fact, the dividend that can be accrued from any competition, in this case, the World Cup, is not the cash prize that a country wins. It is how the country is marketed. It is how the country projects itself to the nations of the world, to leaders of the world. That can be a significant dividend that can be accrued by any participating nation or any host nation for that matter. So looking at that, I heard a political actor saying, if Qatar thinks or money can get you anywhere, this is just the evidence that money cannot get you anywhere. I say this much: money can get you anywhere. Money can get you anything. And I know this is debatable, but the fact is, money can get you anywhere. Money can get you anything, especially in this day and age. We have reached advancement in the world so much that minus money, life becomes a little more difficult. Even in our villages, people need salt. How much more when technology is all over the place and technology requires money? So money can get you anything and money can get you anywhere. That is what money has done for the tiny nation called Qatar. This nation that's been branded in a very negative sense succeeded to host the World Cup because of money. Because Qatar has had the potential to make the massive capital investment and manage to also convince people that it can ensure the security of not only participating nations, but also nationals from all walks of life. And even you're talking about celebrities, and you're talking about, prominent individuals in the world who will go to watch the World Cup. That is what Qatar has done. Now, to you, my Liberian folks, imagine Liberia hosting the World Cup. I know some of you say, well, it is not possible in our lifetime. Yeah, maybe it's not. But I believe that anything is possible. But just imagine it for once. How much of a big deal will it be to see your nation, Liberia, hosting a World Cup? As we speak, the nation Qatar name is being mentioned in every country, in every minute as we speak, because of the World Cup. The commercials during the game, Qatar 2022, it is creating a positive image. It is minimizing significantly the negative image against that Arab nation. That is the greatest diplomacy ever that any country can pay for. At the end of this World Cup, Qatar should have succeeded to say to the world, we are a peace-loving nation and we are peaceful people who love peace and want to live in harmony and want the best for our nation and its people. That is what Qatar has proven. And that anybody can come into this country and do business with us. But back to the question whether or not Qatar is the biggest winner or loser. I told you about 220 billion being spent as the estimate for World Cup 2022. That is 15 times more than what was spent at World Cup in 2018 in Russia. 15 times more. Russia is a far bigger country than Qatar. Russia spent far less, or 15 times less money was spent in Russia compared to 15 times more money spent in Qatar. That is massive. The economic dividends is huge. If you look at the diplomatic dividend, huge. And if you look at the political aspect, it's also huge for Qatar. Many political actors now would rather do business with Qatar because at the end of this World Cup, Qatar will have proven that as a nation, it believes in peace, believes in harmony, and that they are decent people, and they are not terrorists, and they are not extremists, and that they are a developing nation, if I can pull it out. That they understand the importance of development and investment, capital investment for that matter. This World Cup has created the fact that Qatar now will be a tourist attractive nation where people will go to see so much. That is what Qatar has done. So, to the question of whether Qatar is the biggest loser and winner, yes, Qatar is the biggest winner in this World Cup. The cash price is not even up to 100 million. Qatar being able to spend about, the total being spent for the World Cup is 220 billion. Now, let's talk about some things that you need to know quickly here. When Qatar won this competition to host the World Cup in 2017, according to the Minister of Finance of Qatar, Qatar was spending $500 million per week on infrastructure. You hear me well, folks? According to Qatar Minister of Finance, in 2017, Qatar was spending $500 million per week on infrastructures. You're talking about hotels, you're talking about stadiums, you're talking about roads, and many other things that will help to make it possible for Qatar to host the World Cup. What nation in the world will be able to spend such money, massive amount of money, $500 million per week? That is Liberia's budget. Don't listen to the lies that they have about $800+ million. It is a lie. It's inflated. It's not realistic. That is why they don't pay people now. But let me get back to topic. $500 million is what Qatar has been able to spend for 2017 to this year, just to make it possible to host the World Cup. That is a massive capital investment. And you think they are a loser? And you may think that if you look at the total amount of money they spend, why have they been able to accrue? I have just explained that to you. And over the time, the dividend will become massive. But there has been criticism, though, folks, against this whole idea of Qatar hosting a World Cup. There are several things that happened, or a few things. During the construction period, there were so many accidents. There were so many deaths. People died because they were in a rush. They needed to construct these massive and gigantic stadiums. They needed to build upgrade airports. They needed to build massive hotels. So many things they had to do. And from 2017 to now, and relatively around 4 or 5 years, and that time was not enough to host the massive, because they have a gigantic plan, to wow the whole world, to bring the whole world to a standstill, to impress the whole world that they are a serious group of people, that when they decide they're doing something, and they will do it. And what can be massive than hosting the World Cup? We're talking about the war here, and that's what they've been able to do. So during the construction, they contracted people from all nations of the world, the engineers from all parts of the world going there. The general laborers, some of them failed, some people died, and people were saying, "No, this is they are rushing too much. What? I mean, does it have to cost lives just to host the World Cup?" And that this was not appropriate. So much criticism, and then the people who were working, they were working under strenuous conditions and situations. They wanted these projects to be completed before the start of the World Cup. So there was so much rush. Every project is time bound, and the time to complete these projects was shortened because they wanted everything to be done on time. And when people are rushing, they make mistakes, and so people die. So there was so much, of criticism against Qatar. And in fact, we talk about cheap labor, looking at the massive work that was being done in Qatar at the time to make it possible for this particular project. People were not being paid, as like other people said, they were not being paid, good money, given the volume or the work that they were doing within a relatively short period of time. So those were the criticisms that happened. But at the end of it all, Qatar, as a tiny nation, succeeded in completing all of the projects that it needed to complete in order to make it possible for the World Cup to be hosted in that tiny nation. That is a huge achievement. Now, one such person, a major criticism came from, is the former president of FIFA, Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter criticized the decision, and he said Qatar is a country that is too small, and that the World Cup is too big for Qatar to be able to host the World Cup. But Qatar was able to host the World Cup. So let me bring you some numbers. You need to know about the numbers, and then we will get to the politics of it all. So in the numbers we are about to give you constitute the breakdown of the $220 billion spent. And you want to know why they spend, what all they spend all the money on. So let's get to it. Now, $13 million Sorry, folks, I got distracted. Let's go to the numbers here again. We're talking about $42 million. First of all, is the prize awarded to the team that wins it all. So you see what I was telling you? $42 million is what is being given to the country that's going to win the World Cup. That's small money, right? Very small money compared to the $220 billion spent. So FIFA allow each team to decide what of the share of the purse that goes to each player. What that is that if a nation wins or whichever nation wins the World Cup, that nation is going to be awarded a cash prize of 42 million. 42 million. Of that 42 million, it is the country that's going to decide what they give to each of the players. Now, then there is 60 million. All right. There's a $60 million deal by Nike. And that's why I'm wearing my Nike t-shirt here for you to know what Nike is. All right. The symbol you see on my shirt here is Nike. So there's a $60 million set aside given to Nike for the promotion of the World Cup. All right. That's another money that was spent. So it was reported that a Nike deal to sponsor, the World Cup was $60 million. All right. So then you have other sponsors of the World Cup. So you have like Puma and so many brands that you have the Kappa, you have you have Adidas. Most of these businesses that produce sports products, they were able to pump some money in the World Cup. So a total of $60 million was spent just to produce these products, just for the World Cup alone. You see that? Now there is $120 million. The $120 million that will be given to somebody. The highest paid player is France or Mbappe. All right. And he will take home $110 million from the field. So for him to participate, that is the amount of money that is being given to this young man for his participation in the World Cup. So you see that? Now, another amount is $209 million. $209 million is the amount soccer clubs around the world receive from a fund set aside by FIFA to reward them for developing players who play in the tournament for their national teams. The amount is approximately $10,000 per day per player. Can you imagine that, folks? So what this is this amount that I just called, this $209 million is being given out to teams, club teams that were able to train, prepare players who are participating in the World Cup. For example, Barcelona have a lot of players. You have Real Madrid, all the club teams. They are players who came from those club teams. They believe that those club teams help to prepare those players, even though they're playing for their nations, but they have been playing in the club teams. And it's because of the club teams program that prepared them to be ready for participation into the World Cup. So a $209 million has been set aside for those teams, all right, for them to be able to prepare these players that you are watching in the World Cup today. You see that? So that is massive as well. Then there is a $277 million, all right, given to David Beckham. All right. So it was reported that David Beckham was paid by Qatar to serve as the ambassador for the World Cup 2022. All right. And this is a $277 million. This money will be paid to him in installment given to David Beckham over a 10 years period. So Qatar is giving David Beckham $277 million that will be paid in 10 years. It will be paid in installments. So he is the ambassador for World Cup Qatar 2022. So if many of you have been watching, you see David Beckham is in a commercial. David Beckham is a guy who is iconic. He's an internationally recognized soccer star. Many people love and respect him around the world. And he is an ambassador. He is making an endorsement for World Cup 2022 in Qatar, being paid by Qatar. You think with David Beckham endorsing the World Cup, almost saying that Qatar is qualified, is the right nation to host the World Cup, and so you can watch the World Cup. Do you know why it does? David Beckham has been living in the United States now for some time. He played in the NFL. He's somebody who comes from the Western community of the world. So the very Western community that have had this or created a negative narrative against Qatar and other Arab nations, David Beckham is saying, don't believe what you hear. These are decent people that love life like you. And that is why they are hosting the World Cup. And I endorse this World Cup, and they are the right people to host it. Qatar is winning big here, minimizing the whole issue of negative narrative against it. So, folks, you need to know these numbers. Now, also, there is a $440 million. The $440 million is the total prize pooled for 2022 World Cup, up from $400 million in 2018 by comparison. The 2019 Women World Cup prize was $30 million. So, folks, can you imagine that? So, the total prize pool for the 2020 World Cup is actually $440 million. Now, the one that took place in 2018 in Russia, it was $400 million. And then the Women World Cup of 2019 was $30 million. That was the cash prize. That is those who were awarded cash, whether a participating nation, the winning nation, the total amount that's been given right now for Qatar 2022 is $440 million. That is $40 million more than 2018 World Cup. And that is far more money than the 2019 FIFA Women World Cup. So you see, now there is an amount of 1.7 billion. That is the cost covered by FIFA for this year World Cup, with the largest expenditure being prize money, operational costs like hospitality, logistics. All right. And then of that money, that 1.7 billion, there is 320 million that goes to TV operation. Folks, can you imagine that? So the media institutions that are carrying this, you're talking about television stations, carrying the ads, you're talking about so much money. That is $322 million being pumped into that. So media institutions are making money. So the World Cup is more about making money than a nation just winning the prize. So, folks, this is a huge deal. FIFA has spent a total of $1.7 billion. So, of the $220 billion, what FIFA put in is actually $1.7 billion. And the rest of the money was brought in by sponsors and also Qatar that make the biggest investment of it all. Then there's a 1.8 billion. The 1.8 billion is the estimated amount, right, to be gambled this year's World Cup in the U.S. according to American Gaming Association. So we're talking money here. So $1.8 billion is what is being estimated as the amount for gambling. People who are betting and spending money and doing all that just for the World Cup in the United States alone. So the World Cup has been hosted by Qatar is spreading money all over the world. Is your Liberia benefiting? Maybe the way your Liberia is benefiting is your president going there and spending your nation money to cheer for another country's player just because that player having to be his son. And so our president is there for 12 solid days and he is a chairwoman and he's clapping for his son while he uses your country's money. And that's what it is. So, folks, there's so much money being spent here uh, in this particular World Cup, and I can continue to give you figures that will actually blow your mind. Then there is a 6.5 billion to 10 billion. That is the estimated that Qatar spent to build 7 soccer stadiums for this year World Cup. Can you imagine that? So Qatar is spending an estimated amount of 6.5 to 10 billion. And the money that Qatar is spending as a nation goes specifically to what? The soccer stadiums that they are building. Can you imagine that? So let me read that again. The estimate that Qatar is spending for soccer stadium is 6.5 to 10 billion dollars for stadium for this World Cup. After the event, sections of the stadium will be deconstructed and donated to other countries, and the buildings of repurposed into community space for school, shops, cafes, sporting facility, health clinics, etc., etc. Then there is a 14.2 billion. 14.2 billion is Russia total cost associated with hosting the 2018 World Cup, according to Moscow. So if you compare what Moscow spent as a nation, Russia spent as a nation compared to what Qatar is spending far more money. So I can't just continue to read numbers to you that will confuse you. So I will leave the numbers for now. And I will come to the politics of it all. So what is the politics of this World Cup? The politics of World Cup is simple. Politics is more about image. Politics is about narrative. Politics is about leadership for the most part. You have Ghana participating. To get qualified for the World Cup, you have to prepare. You have to make the necessary investment. Are you following me? We are coming to the politics. Politics is more about image. Politics is more about leadership. Politics is somehow about nationalism, even though it's not heavy on that. But let's emphasize on the issue of leadership and trying to project an image. Ghana is participating. Ghana has been able to make the necessary investment in its national team. So Ghana national team has been able to go to the World Cup. Senegal prepared, invested, and so Senegal is participating into the World Cup, in the World Cup. Morocco also provided excellent leadership. To qualify her team, Morocco made the necessary investment. The leaders of Morocco took it serious and saw it very important for its nation to participate in the World Cup so that other nations of the world can see the nation Morocco and its people, that they are a serious group of people who are prepared to compete in the world. Ghana is doing the same thing. I remember Egypt is not in the World Cup this time, but Egypt participated. We know Tunisia is participating in the World Cup. And many other nations in Europe are participating in the World Cup. Liberia has a president who is an iconic superstar. He won nearly every trophy in the World Cup. This is our president's area. It's been 4 years now. Almost 5 years now he's been in office. Lone Star is a disaster even when it comes to the African Cup. So look at it. African Cup. Liberia Lone Star honor our footballing president is a disaster and it's a colossal failure. It is about leadership. It is the fact that we are not providing, or our government or this president is not providing the necessary leadership and is not making the investment. Does any of you here know how much is the budget for the Liberian Lone Star? Have you checked it out? Have you been able to look at the budget? Have you looked at the budget of Ministry of Youth and Sports? Have you seen what has been allotted for the Liberian Lone Star? It is an insignificant amount. I'm even ashamed to call that amount as we speak. Now, if you compare that amount to what has been allotted for this very trip that the president is on, it is about 50 times more than what has been allotted for the Liberian Lone Star, the very Lone Star our president played for. So this thing is about leadership. That's the politics of football. It makes the president of Ghana to look like a leader for a nation to be participating. The necessary investment was made to qualify Ghana, and the players are getting the necessary support from the nation Ghana. The same can be said about Morocco and every nation in the world. Liberians have talents. We've always had talents, especially when it comes to this game called football or soccer. Wia is one of our best examples. And Diba, many of you know the players. Whereby we heard about Juan Mboto, who was like one of the geniuses of this game. We had Juan Mboto before we had Roger Miller, or I think Cameroon, before we start talking about Kano and the other people. We have Juan Mboto. Liberia has always had talent. But the necessary leadership to prepare Liberia to compete in the national and international competition has not been there. And here we are. The nations that have their countries represented at the World Cup, their presidents are not there. They are home. They did the right thing. They made the necessary investment. They prepared their national teams. Their national team getting the necessary support. They are at the World Cup. They have leaders. They have coaches. They have managers for their national teams. The coaches and the managers can represent or are representing the nations at the World Cup. That is leadership. There's something called division of labor, folks. I love this song, Everybody Get Your Area. So maybe there were seditions are agreeing with the president. Yeah, this is the president area. So he needs to be there. But the last time I checked, he's not a manager for Lone Star. He's not the boss of LFA. He's the president for the Republic. He played the game. He enjoyed the best of this game. He knows everything about this game. He's president today because of this game. If there is anything he can best offer this nation when it comes to leadership and investment, it should be the area of football. Our nation is not qualified for even the African Cup of Nations before talking about the World Cup. And our president is sitting at the World Cup when the nation Liberia is now representing, and he claps for another nation. His son is playing for another nation, and he shows up and claps. And people are telling us the president is there having side meetings, and Liberia is going to accrue so much dividends because of the president's participation. Attendance, not participation, attendance. At the World Cup, the president said he has been invited as a guest of honor by FIFA. We are yet to see that invitation. But he's at the World Cup on taxpayers' money. The budget is unknown. The number of delegates, unknown. 12 days. The president, according to the finance minister, gets 2,000 United States dollars a day as a per diem. That excludes a hotel. That excludes his security. That excludes his travel. And you name it all. And talking about the folks, those who are following him as well. He's responsible for them. His wife is there. And when they clap for other country. The father of our nation claps for another country. At the World Cup. He is not clapping for the nation that he has as his leader. His nation is not qualified. He can't qualify his nation, folks. But somehow, some people have found a way to educate or how such a good leader he is, that he's this good that even in his own area, he would not qualify his nation. He would not make his nation to qualify for this competition. And there he sits for 12 days, washing and clapping. Ghana participates, Ghana president is not there. Cameroon participates, Cameroon president is not there. Tunisia participates, Tunisia president is not there. Ecuador participates, Ecuador president is not there. The United States is participating. The United States is clapping for, its president is not there. But our nation's president shows up to clap for another country. And that country president says, I have more serious thing to do. I can be represented by the manager of the team, by the coach of the team. We have leaders to do that. I have played my part as leader by making the necessary investment in our national team and to qualify the national team. And so he said, go well, Team USA. And he's handling businesses at home. But the Liberian leader sits there. And his son is playing for a Western nation. And how come he's this proud African whose son will not play for his nation? And he's clapping. And the people are giving all logical explanations that he's a proud father. His son is playing in the World Cup. How do you not want this father to be there? Is he when the father whose son is playing that World Cup? Is he? He having to be the only president whose son playing the World Cup and stay there for 12 days. So, folks, don't get this twisted. We can't change that now. It has become the reality. But this is a time for sober reflection, Liberians. It is indeed a time for sober reflection. It comes to identity. It comes to nationalism. It comes to patriotism. I've seen, I've heard, I've read. There are many young Africans as we speak who are even supporting other nations in the World Cup over their fellow African nations. I don't know what is wrong with that picture to you. Is it the love for football? And some people have chosen to clap for other nations. They are condemning the African nations. What is that? Is that diplomacy? Are we having identity crisis here? How many nationals in the world that you see are all over the place for some African countries? How many are there that you know? And how far can they go? Do you see other nations just, sidestepping their nations or their brother nations and sister nations to support other nations that are completely far from them? In terms of identity, is that just the love for football? Can you not love the game and love yourself? Your love for the game takes away your self-love and self-pride and self-identity? Is that what it is? Don't get me wrong. We are all humans of the world. And I believe we are all humans of the world, black, white. But there's a reason why we are the way we are. Maybe you should go ask Jesus why he made you a black person. I think it's because he wants you to love that blackness and represent it. Because when we self-claim or claim our identity and compete with our identity, we create a better competition in the world that will lead to a mutual benefit in the world. Be best at what you do for who you are. Let others do best for what they can do for who they are. It generates an impressive competition. And when we all get in this impressive competition with mutual respect and mutual understanding, where the others are not taking down others or talking them down, where you don't talk yourself down and make yourself your better self, you serve the world well. You serve humanity well. Because when you represent yourself best for who you are and loving who you are, you become the best. The whole world will celebrate you. That is why in this world today, politics aside, Obama is respected and celebrated by even Europeans in Europe and Africans around the world. That is why, as we speak, the man Michael Jordan is celebrated by all nationals of the world because he knew his identity. He represented who he was made to be. And after many failures, Michael Jordan will go to prove himself with his identity. And many folks around the world. The same can be said about Messi, the same can be said about Ronaldo, the same can be said about Mbappé, who is an African child but is representing another nation of France. He's being paid $110 million for his participation into the World Cup based on the record that I just read here. The other side is, why is it that many Africans go into other nations, mostly European nations, and do so well? What does that say about us? Other nations of the world are making the necessary investment in young Africans in their nation, and then young Africans are representing them. France won the World Cup the last time. You saw France national team. I'm speaking to you, those of you who are black. France won the World Cup with the participation of young African, of young people of African descent. France made the necessary investment in these young people. Most of the European teams were organized by Europeans. Africans are playing, they are making millions. That is why some of them are participating in the World Cup to this as we speak. You want to talk to me about the politics of football? This is it. How do you see yourself? Self-respect. So let us reflect. In a more profound way, we can qualify Liberia for the African World Cup. For the African Cup. If our leaders make the necessary investment, if they see value in the young people of Liberia, they will do so. Africans should see the value in their young people and invest in them. The idea that they have created little or no opportunity in Africa, so young people have to be going to Europe and other nations of the world. And these nations welcome them. It's a good thing. I get it. Other than that, some of them, their dreams would die naturally, just as Africa has been the place that has killed so many dreams, and our Liberia is number one. We just play for you a music. what the young man is singing. We never thought that rice price would grow more than human being. We never thought the price of gasoline. We never thought school fees. Everything is just high. These are kids who are not having good meals. How will their mind function very well for them to take in? Even the school they go to, they can't even get recess. Some of them are getting stunned from growth. So even before they could start, everything is started against them. That's what we have in Liberia. Leaders take the money, pull it in their pockets. They don't build schools. They don't pay teachers. They don't pay doctors. And we expect to go to the World Cup. And now we have somebody who is an example of what football can do, is our president. And we are nowhere. And he sits at the World Cup with no shame. And you want to lecture us that he's there, he's talking to people there to bring investment to Liberia, that he's gone to beg? Don't be diplomatic about it. He's gone to beg at the World Cup. He has gone to the World Cup to beg other leaders. And now you people are telling us that, well, there's an agreement. What agreement? We want to see that agreement that they're going to complete another portion of the Lofa Manicoma Road. Have you seen the agreement? When has begging become a good thing in your life? Do you really want to be a beggar for life? So this is one of the things we have to change. The idea of Timothy is another thing I need to bring in the picture. Maybe if this president really wanted to clap for his son, he's been president over 4 years now, going to 5 years. If he had done the necessary investment and maybe had qualified Liberia for the World Cup, just maybe Timothy, I would say, well, I want to go play for my father's nation. Did he even have that idea? But in no time, he came to power. He had condominium flying in the roof. He made an investment into himself massively and flies a private jet. And the nation's team budget is insignificant. His budget as president is 100 times more than the nation's national team's budget. So the easier way now for him to clap for something dear to him is to allow another nation to prepare his own son and give his son that opportunity to play in the World Cup. He, as a father, cannot give his son an opportunity to play at the World Cup for his nation. And people are here telling us we are envious of the president. We are haters of the president. Who hates an iconic superstar like Jovia? No one. He has a responsibility to the nation. They elected him for a reason. The reason was never, has not been, will never be for him to enjoy himself. The reason has been, the reason was, the reason is, and will be, as long as he continues to be president, to serve the nation and its people and improve the lives of young people who overwhelmingly voted for him. And now the likes of his cronies around him, who will sycophantically praise him for just about any nonsense that happens and any bad decision that he makes. Those who will justify everything. That is not the point. But I have to go. I have to tell you thank you for watching the broadcast. I thought we will reflect a little bit on the economics, the politics, and the diplomacy of football, the case of World Cup 2022. That is the topic I brought you. We'll take a little bit of this music and I'll give you
The gas price getting up, it getting up, but school fee getting up, it getting up, but rent price getting up, it getting up in this life we live. The gas price getting us, school fees are just climbing up. What kind of life we see us so? We see us so. Lion, baby. Back in the days, LIB was so fantastic. Sweet lane of labor, they never experienced any shortage. In yeah, press, everything was moving smoothly. The trauma jive, the province, was jelly like way. But right now, for 1 gallon, jelly like gold doors. Keke Rala say, afraid to ride around in cold blood. They all about bring back a cop because he now want no nose. Because he now want no nose. They want you for the junior, like even almost then you want your child to go to school, like get AC and diamond fence. Slide chair, mago, po, Jeff for postery. How will you feel when your child be kick out Jeff for postery? Puffy alley up there, you say education is the key. When she go more looking the full of children end up in the street. Waiting for survival, looking for food just to eat. It's a levy here, transportation, now a reach. The country getting harder, resting gap reclaim.
All right, folks, we got to come to the end of this broadcast. I see a comment here from one of our own here, and she couldn't have said it better, and I will close the broadcast with this. Call Formula writes, Arab people have the dignity of their own religion, culture, and no geographical boundaries. Their countries are of their own creation. This is a profound statement. I will do my best to share with you the way I understand it. She said the people, the Arab people, they have dignity of their own religion and culture. And you see in the commercial of the World Cup, they are in their cultural costume or clothes. They are telling you that this is who we are, and we are proud of who we are. And we can achieve anything because we know who we are, we have accepted who we are. Our culture is part of us, our religion makes us. We can't change it because of you. We can only be ourselves and show ourselves for who we are, the religion we believe in. I said in Liberia, the Ghanaians are displaying their culture, Senegalians are displaying their culture, they are flying their national colors. The Arabs are doing that. The people of Qatar, they are doing that. They brought the whole world to see their culture, to see their religion. This tiny nation have made a decision that there will be no alcohol. Alcohol is a big thing in the world. They have proven that they believe in their culture, they believe in their religion, and that's who they are. And they're going to stand for it. And they know the boundaries of their nations as Arab people. The boundaries don't look at it geographically, look at it more in a cultural sense. Their beliefs and their values. Those are the things they are trying to show to this war. Within 29 days, they brought the whole war to a standstill. This tiny nation has been able to accomplish what is a monumental achievement. These are serious people. They have proven to be serious, to respect themselves, to appreciate themselves. That is what they have done. And ends, their countries are of their own creation. They are the one building that nation, Qatar. They are using their money. They are using the natural resources and building their nation the way they want the world to see it, embedded with their cultural values and their religion. They are telling the world this is who we are. Our nation will be the way we want it to be and not how the West want to see it. We can build a skyscraper. We can build all the the football stadiums. We can build the nice hotels and all. But when you enter the walls of the hotel, you will see our culture. You will see our religion. You will see the food that we eat. You will see the clothes that we wear. And we're going to show it to you on TV. And so when you enter that nation, as you look at the beautiful buildings, you see them. That is what they've done. Can we build a Liberia? Can we? With our culture, we can do that. We just have to decide to do it. But we must take pride in who we are, our dignity, our nationalism, our citizenship. We have to believe in it. In today's Liberia is still in America. They call you American man. You're not qualified to run for anything. No Arab nation would tell any of its citizens, because it was in America for years and goes by and said, you're not one of us. We are doing this to ourselves. What a shame. Don't you think you don't know the Arabs travel? They learn in other societies. They return and carry the knowledge and build their country embedded with their values. And when they return, they are Arabs. They practice their religion. They practice their culture. What do you do when you go to Liberia? I will have to leave it there. And I have to say thank you for watching this broadcast. This is Focus on Liberia. I'm Anthony C. I brought you another edition of the Hour of Politics on the topic, the economics, the diplomacy, the politics of football, the case of World Cup 2022. It's obvious, more than likely, if they manage it well, the economy of Qatar will get a boom, especially in the area of tourism. And during the 28 days, money will be spent by all nations of the world in Qatar. Diplomacy, they brought the whole world to that little country to see them for who they are. The politics, they exhibited leadership as a nation to host a global event. That's what they have done. And they invited other nations to see them. And they are rubbing shoulders with powerful nations and powerful leaders. They are welcoming them in their homes. And then those people feel comfortable to do business with them politically and economically. I have to go now. I'm a cartoon guy. The son that takes us home is always, we are all Liberians. If Qatar can do it, we can do it. But until we get those leaders who believe in us, believe in themselves, understand what nationalism and patriotism is, who will understand what is citizenship and the responsibilities that come with citizenship, until we do those things and our leaders believe in those things, we are just sleeping. Take home with you this son, and bye-bye.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.